In a quiet suburb of Columbus, Ohio, 32-year-old Mark had been married to his wife, Emily, for 7 years. They had 2 young children and led what appeared to be a harmonious life. Mark worked as a software engineer, often from home, while Emily held a managerial position at a local marketing firm. Their relationship seemed stable, built on mutual respect and shared responsibilities. The Willows subdivision where they lived was picture perfect: manicured lawns, friendly neighbors, and community barbecues every summer. Their Tudor-style home stood as a testament to their success, a 2-story brick house with a meticulously maintained garden that Emily took pride in. Inside, family photos lined the hallway, chronicling their journey from college sweethearts to parents of 5-year-old Lily and 3-year-old Ethan. Mark had always prided himself on being attentive. He remembered anniversaries, supported Emily's career ambitions, and took the kids to the park every Saturday morning so she could enjoy her yoga class. They had what many of their friends called the perfect marriage. The first signs were subtle. Emily's phone would buzz, and she'd glance at it with an expression Mark couldn't quite read. She began angling her screen away when he entered the room, a small movement, almost imperceptible. Mark brushed it off as work stress. After all, Emily had mentioned her company was undergoing restructuring, and she was vying for a promotion. Working late again? Mark asked one Thursday evening, stirring pasta for the kids' dinner. The Johnson campaign is launching next week, Emily replied, not meeting his eyes. David needs the final approvals tonight. David. Mark had heard that name with increasing frequency over the past few months. Emily's new colleague. The marketing whiz from Chicago who had apparently revolutionized the company's approach to client acquisition. You've been working with David a lot lately, Mark observed casually, testing the waters. Emily's cheeks flushed slightly. He's brilliant at what he does. I'm learning so much from him. As weeks passed, Emily's behavior grew increasingly distant. She'd spend hours getting ready before work, wearing perfume she'd never worn before. Their intimate moments became rare, and when they did occur, Emily seemed mentally elsewhere. She started attending team-building events on weekends and client dinners that ran suspiciously late. One night, as Mark was reading in bed waiting for Emily to return from one such dinner, he received a text from their neighbor, Karen. Just saw Emily at Riverside Bistro. Thought you were with her. Looked cozy. Mark's heart sank. Riverside Bistro was a romantic spot along the Scioto River, not exactly known for business meetings. He replied with a casual thanks and put his phone down, his mind racing. For the first time, he allowed himself to acknowledge the possibility that had been lurking in the corners of his consciousness: Emily might be having an affair. When Emily returned home, her cheeks flushed and eyes bright, she claimed the dinner had gone exceptionally well. The client loved our pitch, she said, avoiding Mark's gaze as she removed her earrings. We're celebrating with champagne on Friday. Mark nodded, a knot forming in his stomach. That's great, honey. That night, as Emily slept soundly beside him, Mark stared at the ceiling, weighing his options. He could confront her with his suspicions, but without evidence, she could easily deny everything. He could hire a private investigator, but that felt extreme. Or he could check her phone, an invasion of privacy that went against everything he believed in about trust in a relationship. But trust, it seemed, had already been broken. The opportunity came 3 nights later. Emily had taken a sleeping pill after complaining of insomnia. Once her breathing deepened into the rhythm of sleep, Mark silently reached for her phone on the nightstand. His hands trembled as he typed in her passcode, Lily's birthday, something he'd seen her enter countless times. The phone unlocked, and Mark felt a momentary pang of guilt. This wasn't who he was. But then he opened her messages and found a conversation thread with David W. His guilt evaporated, replaced by a cold, spreading numbness. The messages were explicit and abundant. Photos exchanged. Plans made. Declarations of passion. And worse, jokes about Mark's obliviousness. He's too absorbed in his coding to notice anything, Emily had written. Sometimes I think he prefers his computer to me. Mark scrolled through months of betrayal, documented in painful detail. There were check-ins after their rendezvous, home safe. Mark didn't suspect a thing. There were plans for their next meeting, book the usual room at the Grand. I'll say I'm visiting my sister. His fingers numb, Mark took screenshots, sending them to his own phone. Evidence. Proof. A record of the destruction of his marriage. He carefully replaced Emily's phone and retreated to the guest bathroom, where he vomited until his stomach was empty. The following morning, Mark went through the motions of their routine, making coffee, preparing the kids' lunches, kissing Emily goodbye as she left for work. His face felt frozen in a mask of normalcy while inside, he was shattered. Instead of working, he spent the day planning. He called in sick to his office. He researched Ohio's divorce laws. He checked their finances, discovering that Emily had been using their joint credit card for hotel rooms and expensive dinners. Then he made an appointment with a therapist for himself and secured consultations with 3 divorce attorneys. When Emily returned home that evening, Mark was waiting at the kitchen table. The kids were at his parents' house. He dropped them off with a vague explanation about needing a night to talk with Emily about adult things. "We need to talk," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. Emily set down her purse, her expression cautious. "About what?" Mark placed her phone on the table. "I know about David." Her face went through a series of emotions, shock, anger, fear, before settling on indignation. "You went through my phone. How could you invade my privacy like that?" The audacity of her response ignited something in Mark. "How could I invade your privacy? How could you invade our marriage with another man?" Emily's defense crumbled as Mark showed her the screenshots. She tried several tactics, minimizing, it was just a few times, blaming Mark, "You were so distant," and finally, tearful remorse, "I made a terrible mistake. I still love you and the kids." "How long?" Mark asked, his voice hollow. Emily stared at the floor. 9 months. 9 months. Nearly a year of lies. Mark had to grip the table to steady himself. "I want to fix this," Emily pleaded, reaching for his hand. "We can go to counseling. David means nothing to me. It was a stupid mistake." Mark pulled his hand away. "A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or burning dinner. This was a choice. Thousands of choices, made day after day." Despite his resolve, Mark agreed to couples therapy. Not because he believed their marriage could be saved, but because he needed time to formulate his plan. The children complicated matters. He wouldn't rush into a divorce that might hurt them unnecessarily. He needed strategy, not just reaction. Their first therapy session with Dr. Winters was revelatory. Emily admitted the affair began during Mark's intense 3-month project for a Silicon Valley client. She'd felt neglected, and David had provided the attention she craved. Mark listened, noting how Emily centered herself in the narrative, her needs, her feelings, her justifications. "And what about Mark's needs?" Dr. Winters asked. "Did you consider how your actions would affect him and your children?" Emily's response was telling, "I never thought he'd find out." Not, "I never wanted to hurt him." Just that she hadn't expected consequences. After 6 sessions, Mark had gathered all the information he needed. He understood the depth of Emily's selfishness, the extent of her deception, and most importantly, her fear of public exposure. Emily valued her reputation in their community and her standing at work. She wanted to preserve the image of their perfect family, even as she destroyed its foundation. Mark began his calculated response. First, he transferred half of their savings to a separate account, legally permissible according to his attorney, given the circumstances. Then, he documented every expense related to Emily's affair using their joint funds, building a financial case. At home, he maintained a facade of working toward reconciliation while secretly preparing for separation. He began taking the children on special outings, strengthening his bond with them. He joined the PTA, became more involved at their school, and befriended other parents, establishing himself as a devoted father in the community's eyes. Emily, believing they were on the path to repair, grew complacent. She'd ended things with David. Mark had confirmation through monitoring their communication, and was making efforts at home, cooking Mark's favorite meals, initiating intimacy, planning family outings. 2 months into this charade, Mark executed the next phase of his plan. He met with Emily's boss, Richard, under the pretense of surprising Emily with an anniversary trip. During their friendly conversation, Mark accidentally revealed that Emily had been using company time for personal activities, expressing shock that Richard didn't know about her extended lunches with David. "I assumed you approved their project meetings at the Grand Hotel," Mark said innocently. Emily said the company was covering those expenses. Richard's expression told Mark everything he needed to know. There was no company project requiring hotel rooms. A week later, Emily came home pale and shaken. She'd been called into a meeting with HR and Richard. The company had launched an investigation into her expense reports and time sheets. David had already been questioned. "What did you do?" she demanded, cornering Mark in the kitchen. Mark feigned confusion. "What are you talking about?" Richard knew details only you could have told him. Mark shrugged. "I ran into him at the coffee shop. We chatted about work-life balance. I mentioned how hard it was when you were working late nights with David. Was that wrong?" Emily's career began to unravel. The investigation revealed she'd falsified expense reports, claiming personal meals with David as client meetings. While she wasn't fired, she was demoted and placed on probation. David, meanwhile, resigned to pursue other opportunities. As Emily's professional life crumbled, Mark continued building his case for primary custody. He documented every therapy session, every parenting duty he fulfilled, and every instance where Emily's work took precedence over family time. 6 months after discovering the affair, Mark finally filed for divorce. The timing was strategic, a week before Emily's annual family reunion in Michigan. She would have to explain her impending divorce to her judgmental parents and successful siblings, all while processing the legal papers Mark's attorney had prepared. The divorce proceedings were methodical. Mark's evidence of Emily's infidelity, financial impropriety, and recent work troubles painted a clear picture. His attorney argued successfully for a favorable asset division and a joint custody arrangement that gave Mark the children during the school week, with Emily having weekend visitation. Through it all, Mark maintained a composed, reasonable demeanor in court and during mediation. He never raised his voice, never showed the anger that still burned inside him. This calculated restraint made Emily appear increasingly unstable as she grew frustrated with the proceedings going against her. By the time the divorce was finalized, Emily had lost much more than her marriage. Her reputation at work was tarnished. Her standing in their social circle had diminished as friends inevitably took sides. Her relationship with her family was strained. And most painfully, her time with Lily and Ethan was reduced to weekends and holidays. Mark, meanwhile, had emerged from the ordeal with his dignity intact. He'd secured a promotion at work, the flexible hours allowed him to be home when the children returned from school. He'd maintained most of their friendships and even developed a cordial co-parenting relationship with Emily. To outside observers, he was the model of resilience and maturity. 18 months after discovering those devastating messages, Mark sat on his patio, watching Lily and Ethan play in the backyard of the home he'd kept in the settlement. A text arrived from Emily: "Can we talk about extending my time with the kids this summer?" Mark stared at the message, feeling a complex mixture of emotions. The satisfaction of his meticulously executed revenge had faded, leaving an empty space where his anger had lived. He'd won by every measurable standard, yet victory felt hollow. As he watched his children laugh, Mark wondered if true healing would ever be possible. The revenge he'd so carefully crafted had brought justice but not peace. Emily had betrayed him, and he had dismantled her life in return. They were both forever changed by the experience. Mark put his phone down without responding, uncertain about what came next. The sun was setting over the neighborhood, casting long shadows across the yard. Tomorrow would be another day of rebuilding, of trying to create something meaningful from the wreckage of betrayal. Whether that included allowing Emily back into their lives in a larger capacity remained an open question, one that even Mark, with all his careful planning, didn't yet have an answer for.